Good evening. My name is Scott Peters. This is a meeting of the Evanston Plan Commission. One of the items on the agenda is a plan unit development. For plan unit developments, the Plan Commission hears testimony and makes recommendations to the City Council. The Plan Commission is not the final authority, but makes a recommendation. Sometimes the council follows our recommendation, and sometimes they do something different. But it is our task to take testimony from the applicant, from anyone who's interested in testifying regarding the project. At one time, prior to modern technology, a court reporter would take down everything that's said, but today everything that is said is recorded and also televised. So that means, since it's recorded, that when you're speaking, you'll need to use the podium and the microphone, and you'll need to identify yourself. The order of testimony for the plan unit development portion of the hearing begins with a report from the staff. And following the staff report, then the applicant presents its case and facts and testimony to support the application. There are some time limits for those who are participating, and the chair has discretion to change those time limits. This is a fairly complex matter, and so the time limit for the petitioner will be about 30 minutes. At the end of the testimony from each witness, the members of the commission will possibly do cross-examination, and at the end of that testimony, then members of the public may ask questions of those who have supported the petition. When the questions are done, then people who oppose the petition will have a chance to make statements. And again, there are time limits, a longer limit for groups and a shorter limit for individuals. We'll increase the time slightly from the 5 and 10 minutes that are provided in the rules, since we're increasing the time for the applicant. Following that and following cross-examination by the commission and questions and examination by the petitioner, then the petitioner can put in any rebuttal testimony they might have. We ask that the testimony not be repetitive, so if other people have testified a certain way, you don't have to come and repeat that testimony. But if you want to say something, you can say, I agree with what John Doe had said, rather than repeating all of it. We usually don't go past some time between 11 and midnight, and if we're not done, we continue the hearing to a different date. When all of the evidence is done, the commission will discuss the matter and address the extent to which the testimony has met the standards that apply to plan unit developments. At the end of that discussion, or during that discussion, sometimes questions come up, and one or more commission members may ask questions of either the applicants or respondents, and but otherwise the testimony is closed. The final step is for the commission to make a recommendation and address how the standards are met or not met based on the testimony. So that's sort of the general order that we use. If people have petitions, they're only admitted if the person presenting the petition or someone else present has witnessed all of the signatures. Otherwise, petitions aren't admissible. We do take records, letters, and make them part of the record, but it's not possible to cross-examine those documents, and that would affect the weight given to them. That's our general procedure. First item of business is the minutes of our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve or correct
Motion to approve.
the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? I did forget to announce that on my right is Damir Latinovic, and he is a new staff member, planner, and he will be staffing the commission. We have not always had staff sitting in the front of the room, but the director has asked that we do that, and so tonight we're doing that. The rules, the director, Mark Menzer. And so the Rules Committee will at some point address this, and then that question of how to do that and any change in our procedures comes before the commission, but we don't have time to do that now. So let's move to the staff report on the proposal that's before us.
Good evening, Commissioners. Melissa Klatz, Interim Zoning Administrator. I will first read the case into the record. John O'Donnell of O'Donnell Investment Company, developer of the proposed project, applies for a special use for a planned development in the C1A Commercial Mixed Use District, Zoning Code Section 610.3.3, to construct a 9-story, 97-foot-tall mixed-use commercial, office, and residential tower. The proposed tower consists of 112 dwelling units, approximately 15,670 gross square feet of office space, approximately 12,064 gross square feet of commercial retail space, and 104 enclosed parking spaces. The applicant seeks site development allowances for the number of dwelling units per lot size, floor area ratio, building height, enclosed parking setback, number of parking spaces, and the number and length of loading berths. The Plan Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, the final determining body for this proposal. The property in question is located at 835 Chicago Avenue, which is located on the southeast corner of Chicago Avenue and Main Street. The site has been vacant since 2007 and is located in the C1A Commercial Mixed Use Zoning District. The property is also located within the newly created Main Street Tax Increment Financing District and is adjacent to the CTA and Metro stations and the surrounding areas that are currently under review in the Main Street Station Transit-Oriented Development Plan, which is scheduled to be adopted in 2014. The project consists of ground floor commercial space as well as enclosed parking with additional parking underground. The second floor features office space as well as residential amenities, and floors 3 through 9 feature studio to 3-bedroom residential units. The entire building measures 97 feet to the roof, and the project will be LEED certified silver as required by the city's Green Building Ordinance. The site plan features a one-way right turn egress only out onto Chicago Avenue via a 12-foot wide curb cut. City staff has worked extensively with the developer to decrease the size of this curb cut as to minimize the impact on traffic in the area. The developer plans to utilize $2 to $3 million of TIF funds and estimates that the completed project will generate $16 million back into the TIF over the life of the TIF. The developer intends to permanently remove 4 metered parking spaces on Chicago Avenue and also intends to follow the Chicago Avenue streetscape plan, which includes wider sidewalks and street trees. The plan includes a number of requested development allowances, which means that these development allowances exceed the typical zoning regulations of the C1A district. All of these development allowances are within the allowed maximum development allowance and do not exceed that which can be allowed by a 2/3 city council majority vote. So since they are not exceeding that, it only needs the typical majority city council vote. Those site development allowances include number of dwelling units per lot size, with a request for 112 dwelling units over the regular maximum of 87 dwelling units, a floor area ratio of 4.86 over the regular maximum of 4.0, a 97-foot height for the building over the regular maximum of 67 feet, a 10-foot setback for enclosed parking off of Chicago Avenue, which is over the regular regulation of a 20-foot setback for enclosed parking, 104 parking spaces, as opposed to the regular requirement of 216 parking spaces. And the 104 parking spaces comes out to just less than a 1.0 parking ratio, which is typical of recently approved planned developments. And also a request for 2 short loading berths with 25 feet in length, where the requirement for this project would be for 5 short loading berths with lengths of 35 feet. Additionally, city staff has worked with the developer to come up with a number of public benefits that would be beneficial to the neighborhood and the community as a whole. These public benefits are an ongoing discussion and are not yet finalized, but they are things that we have been working with. They include a number of items, including following the Chicago Avenue streetscape plan, a payment to the planned improvements to St. Paul's Park, which is immediately west of Chicago Avenue near the CTA station, the burying of adjacent property utility lines, a payment regarding the lost revenue of the city for the 4 metered parking spaces that will be removed, and a payment if and when the project changes over from rental units to condos, as is typically done by the city's affordable housing ordinance. City staff feels that the proposed project does meet the intent of the plan development design guidelines and is further discussed within the plan development binder. With that, I will turn it over to the applicants to give their presentation.
If an attorney for the applicant plans to give evidence, you'll need to be sworn. You have to tell me how to proceed. In the meantime, I'll ask everyone who might testify to raise their right hand. Will you tell the truth? Do you swear you'll tell the truth and the whole truth? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Patrick Thompson. I'm the attorney on this project, and I have with me some of our consultants who will be testifying this evening. I would ask, if possible, if we can use the microphone and I can have the witnesses remain seated. One of our witnesses had recently had surgery and needs to remain seated, and the other witnesses will remain seated, but I can present
The problem is we are on camera with people actually watching on cable television.
Okay.
So we might have to move the location, but we can use the microphone.
Does the camera follow?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And another, just a bit of housekeeping from a procedural standpoint. I have our architect, Donald Cooper, our appraiser, Michael Wolin, and our traffic consultant, Louie Abuna. We distributed their CVs to the board, and I just wanted to enter those, if I could enter all of 3 at this time.
We will take those CVs into evidence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So they're exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Again, thank you and good evening to all of the commission members. Again, my name is Patrick Thompson. I'm with the law firm of Burke, Warren, McKay, and Saratella, representing O'Donnell Investment Company, the applicant, with respect to the application for a special use to permit a planned development consisting of the construction of approximately 191,670 square foot, 9-story mixed-use structure on the vacant land located at the southeast corner of Chicago Avenue and Main Street. With me today are John O'Donnell and Jeff Clark from O'Donnell Investment Company, Don Cooper, as mentioned, our architect, Michael Wolin, and Louis Abuna. This evening, we are seeking the approval of the special use as required by Section 6-3-6 of the zoning ordinance. Planned developments are one of the specifically enumerated special uses in Section 63-5-2 of the ordinance, designed to maximize efficiencies and to encourage innovation. The subject property is zoned C1A Commercial Mixed Use District. The planned development consists of constructing a new 9-story mixed-use building and multifamily residential development. As mentioned in the staff report, the first floor will include a retail space and a lobby. The second floor will include state-of-the-art office space designed for startups and tech companies and building amenities for the residential above. The third through ninth floors will consist of the residential apartment units. The project will include 104 parking spaces, including 30 short-term retail residential parking spaces located at grade level, and 74 residential parking spaces located on the lower level. I'd like to now call my first witness, Don Cooper from Grech Architects. Don, if you could please state your name and title and briefly summarize your qualifications.
My name is Donald Copper. I am a principal at GREC Architects, licensed Illinois architect since 1986, principal of my current firm since the year 2000.
And Don, you are familiar with the proposed plan development, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you please briefly describe the proposed development with some detail as far as the architectural?
Of course. This plan development consists of construction of a new 9-story mixed-use commercial and multifamily residential development on the vacant land at the southeast corner of Chicago Avenue and Main Street in South Evanston. The first floor will include retail space and tenant lobby. The second level will include state-of-the-art office space and building amenities to be shared with residential tenants, including outdoor green space at the northeast corner of the site. The third through ninth floors will consist of 112 total residential units, including 14 studios, 49 one-bedroom units, 42 two-bedroom units, and 7 three-bedroom units. The building will achieve LEED Silver status certification. The project will use the highest quality building materials to create an appearance that will complement the surrounding neighborhood and building stock. The predominantly glass exterior will give the building a light appearance and includes brick to relate to the existing context. The project's convenient access to the Metra, CTA, and bus services paired with zip car opportunities and bike storage areas within the building's parking facilities will promote a transit-oriented development.
Thank you, Don. Are you familiar, excuse me, Don, you're familiar with Section 6-10-19D of the City of Evanston zoning ordinance and mandatory plan developments, minimum thresholds for plan developments in commercial districts, correct?
Yes, I am.
And per Section 6-10-19D of the ordinance, a proposed development in the commercial district that meets at least one of the minimum thresholds may only be authorized as a plan development, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is the zoning lot to be improved with the proposed development in excess of 30,000 square feet?
Yes, it is. The subject lot is 30,500 square feet.
Does the development provide for more than 24 residential units?
Yes, the project will include 112 total residential units.
And will the development contain more than 24 units of one type of any combination, residential, commercial, business, retail, and office?
Yes, the development will require an application for a building permit and will contain more than 24 combined units for residential, office, and retail use.
And finally, the proposed development does provide for new construction of more than 20,000 square feet of gross floor area for any commercial business, retail, and office use under one roof, correct?
Yes, the proposed development provides for the new construction of approximately 28,664 square feet of gross floor area for retail and office use.
Thank you. And so we'd like to now move on to our next witness, Michael Wolin. Thank you, Don. And I apologize. I said Cooper earlier. It's Copper. I apologize. Our next witness is Michael Wolin, and as mentioned, his provided his CV to the commission. Michael, please state your name and title and a brief summary of your qualifications.
My name is Michael Wolin. I'm an MAI appraiser, certified general appraiser, state of Illinois, other areas as well. I am the past president of the Appraisal Institute as well.
And how long have you worked in the appraisal industry?
Approximately 37 years, of which approximately 30 years have been commercial properties. The
Okay.
balance were multifamily residential.
And you're familiar with the subject property?
I am. The subject's been vacant since the previous two-story retail office development was demolished circa 2007. After the previous owner defaulted on its loan, Cole Taylor then foreclosed on the subject in 2008. Then in about December 2010, the applicant purchased the subject from Cole Taylor. This mixed-use development capitalized on its proximity to nearby schools, mass transit system, and other local amenities, and will remedy a long-standing blighted parcel, generate, based on Evans' study and our study, approximately $16 million in substantial tax revenue dollars. This proposed project will preserve and enhance future characteristics with ample open green space, something that's always wanted on a mixed-use development, and it's not the applicant's intention to alter the existing topography while developing this project. Our developer will utilize quality materials complementing surrounding recently developed projects and will be in conformance with and subject to building codes while keeping in mind the sensitivity of the neighborhood. The permit application represents one of the best chances of the parcel to overcome the documented lack of development ability and to, in effect, contribute to the vitality of this district and neighboring properties. This mixed use will not impede the normal and/or orderly development or improvement of other property in the immediate vicinity for uses permitted by right in the district. It's my thought that the proposed special use is consistent with the objective to development within the city and to minimize potential adverse impact to the adjacent neighborhoods and to prevent the need for significant increases in infrastructure and other community resources.
So, thank you. In your professional opinion, the proposed development is keeping in with the purposes and policy of the comprehensive
Yes, sir.
general plan and zoning ordinance?
Yes, sir, it is.
And will the plan development, if approved, have a negative cumulative effect in combination with the existing special uses?
It will not have a negative effect. It's my thought that in accordance with the land use section of the comprehensive plan, urban housing and commercial residential mixed-use developments such as the proposed development are desirable and encouraged in the area where the subject is located as a viable improvement to the community. Similar mixed-use buildings are located at the subject property's northeast and northwest corners, and the proposed development is consistent with that objective to maintain the essential quality, viability, attractiveness of Evanston's commercial districts while encouraging new economic development consistent with the character of the city.
And will the plan development interfere or diminish the value of the properties in the neighborhood?
No, sir. This urban infill neighborhood development will remedy a longstanding blighted parcel and should increase property values by creating additional vitality to the area, as this parcel has been vacant since circa 2007. This project, as described, will generate additional tax revenues as well. The special use will be in conformance with the balance of the existing uses in the area and will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare, representing the continuation of the positives, employment, traffic, quality representation, and diminution of negatives of an existing or integral Evanston business.
And is it your professional opinion that development will adequately be served by the surrounding public facilities and services?
It is that adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other facilities necessary for this proposed development special use either exist or will be provided by the applicant as described. As part of the development, the applicant will relocate the existing common utilities, enhancing the safety of the surrounding area. The subject is located within a quarter block from the Main Street Metro Union Pacific North, as well as the CTA Purple Line stations. The CTA bus routes serve the immediate area, have stops immediately adjacent to the subject property. Several public schools and parks surround the subject property as well.
Thank you. Is the planned development compatible with the surrounding developments?
In my feeling, it is. The described development will be in conformance with and is compatible to nearby recent mixed-use developments and reasonably similar to buildings immediately east and north of the subject property.
And does the planned development comply with the site controls and standards for a C1A commercial district?
Yes, sir, in my thought it does.
And finally, does the planned development comply with all other applicable regulations?
Again, I believe it does. This development as described should conform to the applicable zoning regs and other applicable city ordinances and codes. It's my opinion that if the proposed project is designed as described throughout this project, and according to the City of Evanston's building code, the special use will not have detrimental effects on surrounding property values. I did consider current economic and demographic trends as well as location of the subject. As a result of this analysis, mixed use represents the highest and best use of the subject, both as vacant as an improved parcel of land. The improvement is in the interest of the public convenience and should not have a significant negative impact on the general welfare of the neighborhood or the community.
Thank you, Michael. I'd now like to call on our...
Before you do that, we may have some questions for this witness.
Sure.
You testified that the property, if developed according to the proposal, will not have an adverse effect on the values of surrounding property. Let me ask you if, when the proposal is compared to what can be built as of right, if you believe that compared to what can be built as of right, there is no adverse effect on the value of surrounding property.
That's true.
Could you elaborate the basis for your conclusion?
Sure. To me, the highest and best use of this property is a mixed use. To leave it as an office in today's market wouldn't be appropriate. To leave it as strictly as a multifamily residential development, again, wouldn't be appropriate. So developers trying to take the best of both worlds in terms of residential, multifamily, commercial, as well as office. That being the highest and best use of the site, and that being what's surrounding the subject property at this location.
What is the basis for your opinion that to develop it for office purposes entirely?
I think the office
Not
market is somewhat slow right now, and I don't think it's the right time to build office.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can add that my client did try to market this parcel for office use. And as mentioned in the staff report, we had spent time marketing that, and there just isn't the demand for exclusively office.
Did you, when you examined the site, did you notice the use of the building to the east across the alley?
Yes, sir, I did. The Lucky Platter building? Yes, sir.
And what uses are in that building?
Mixed use, residential, commercial.
Does anyone else on the commission have questions of this witness? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Wolin, you continued to refer to the site as being blighted.
I'm sorry?
You continued to refer to the site as being a blight in the neighborhood. How do you define blight?
Well, I look at it as it's been vacant for an extended period of time, not creating. That's how I look at it.
Okay, so
Not as a negative, like it's a bad area, bad neighborhood, bad anything, just that it's been a vacant, unimproved parcel.
okay, so it's just vacant.
Yes, sir.
It's not blight.
Oh, no,
All
not
right.
like that, no, no.
Any other questions of this witness? Go ahead.
How do you evaluate what the rent structure could be? How do you evaluate how many people want to live in Evanston for the rents that you'll be charging to make the project profitable?
I would defer, unless Patrick decides, I would defer to the expert on the applicant to answer that kind of question.
If I can clarify, in terms of the rent structure, are you asking what they're proposing?
No. Is this thing working?
Yes.
We hear you.
Okay. What I really want to know is that you said the office space rental is slow. How do you come to evaluate that apartment rental units in Evanston are desirable enough to build a building of them?
If you have a different witness who
Yeah, I would
answers
ask
the
that-
marketing question, we'll defer this question.
If we can either defer it, or I would ask
We can
Mr. John
defer-
O'Donnell
we'll-
to respond to
We'll
that.
defer it until he's going to speak.
Okay, I did not have him as a witness to present, but rather as a witness to answer questions. So at whatever time you would like to respond, we can be responsive to you.
If he doesn't have other presentation, now is a good time. Could you identify yourself and state whether you've been sworn as a witness? No.
We tried to market this as an office building for some time. The problem with developing office buildings in Evanston is that the replacement cost rent, in other words, the rent necessary to obtain capital to build an office building, is about $25 a foot. The rents currently in Evanston are about $15 a foot, so there's an enormous gap between those two. And we did discuss at one time with the city about building an office building and having the city subsidize that through a TIF district. But otherwise, you could not obtain capital for that. Relative to apartment rents, however, it's easy to evaluate alternative apartments in the area and identify what rents they are taking. We've looked at 5 or 6 new buildings or buildings built since the mid-1990s and utilized their rent. Now, we recognize in southern Evanston the rents are somewhat lower than they are in northern Evanston, where the bulk of these are built. So we discounted that fairly significantly. And we do, I mean, hopefully when you look at the building, you'll recognize that we are trying to build a very, very high quality building, and perhaps higher than the rents in that area would normally obtain.
Are there other questions?
Michael, I take it that you will not be looking, the developer will not be looking to the city to upgrade the utility infrastructure. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I can answer that, that is correct. That we are not looking to the city to upgrade that. And in fact, the developer, as part of their public benefit, is going to relocate the existing utilities that are in the alley underground from the above poles. So they're taking on that cost.
Thank you.
This question is just a follow-up to the appraiser, Mr. Wolin. You're asked some questions about, I believe you mentioned the word blighted. According to the staff report, and I believe your testimony, this property is located in what is the newly created Main Street Tax Increment Financing
Yes, sir.
District, correct?
That is true.
And as a TIF district that had to satisfy a certain eligibility, correct?
Yes, that's true.
And is it your understanding that this particular TIF district, as part of one of the factors, was a blighting factor? And blighting doesn't necessarily mean substandard property conditions.
Correct.
It can mean vacant land, unused land that should be used. Was that
That's what we
you were-
intended.
what you were
As I
getting
said
to?
Mr. Steele, yes, sir.
Okay, so Evanston, the city council approved the TIF district, and the TIF district has a statement as to what the intended use, according to city council, for this site and other sites that are located in the TIF district, correct? And based on your research and analysis, is the proposed use, this project, is consistent with that intended use as set forth by City Council. Okay, thanks.
Could you restate the answer with the microphone on?
Yes, sir.
Melissa, can you help with the microphone?
Yes, sir, that's true.
The answer.
Yes, sir, that's
is
true.
affirmative.
Mr. Sario, that's true.
Other questions?
What is the purpose for which the TIF funds will be used? I apparently didn't read that section of the report, but could you help me out there?
Sure. Well, originally when this building or the parcel was being marketed as an office building, that was to be used for office purposes only, and that's what we're intending to use. Any TIF dollars that would be utilized for this project would really be for the office component of this.
How do you distinguish between the expense involved in building the office component as opposed to the residential component?
Well, in terms of the overall cost, that's what the intent of any utilization of TIF was, again, was for the office. In terms of the costs, specifically, it's going to comply with statutory requirements of land acquisition, site prep, all of the costs that would be eligible under the state statute for TIF.
I mean, it's fungible, right? If you get $2 million, $3 million, it all goes into the pot, does it not?
It does in terms of the overall cost of what you can utilize it for, but the intent, again, and it is in the intent of my client, to really offset the cost of the office component of this, as he outlined the cost of the capital.
Point out that the question of TIFs is not before this body, having been acted upon by the City Council, but it's a reasonable set of questions. Yes.
I'm John O'Donnell. We allocated the specific costs to the extent possible, where he could break down costs that are specifically allocated to an office portion, and to the extent there are things like foundation costs that are allocated on the square foot. So he really did try to distinguish and identify the cost of each identified use, and the return on each cost based upon their expected rent.
Mr. I understand we can't get into the TIF question, but the report indicates that the TIF fund will be replenished to the extent of, I think, $16 million over the life of the TIF. Is that correct?
I believe that was the projections, yes.
Now, is that just property tax, or does that include sales tax, or
Just property tax.
Just property tax?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing no questions, another witness. We're ready to hear from another witness.
Yes. My final witness, Mr. Chairman, is our traffic consultant, Louie Abuna from KLOA. Please state your name, title, and a brief summary of your qualifications.
Sure. Again, my name is Louie Abuna, last name spelled A-B-O-O-N-A, and I'm a principal with the firm KLOA. We're located in Rosemont, Illinois. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Illinois and been practicing in the traffic engineering field for over 25 years.
And you are familiar with the subject property?
Yes, I am.
And you're familiar with the neighborhood surrounding the property, in particular the intersection of Chicago Avenue and Main Street?
Yes, I'm very familiar with that, and as part of our traffic study, we looked at that intersection in particular and conducted counts on weekdays and Saturday.
And in your professional opinion as a traffic engineer, will the proposed development cause undue traffic congestion?
No, it will not, and this opinion is based on several factors. First is the amount of traffic that the project would generate is going to be generally low given the type of uses being proposed, given the mixed nature of the proposed development, but most importantly, given its proximity to the alternative modes of transportation, specifically the CTA station, the Metro station, the bike routes on Chicago Avenue, which is designated by the city as a bike route, and other pedestrian passageways that are available. The development generated traffic, based on our analysis, can be accommodated efficiently by the roadway system without significant impact. Then the proposed access has been designed in such a way so the proposed access has also been designed in a way that would adequately serve the traffic from the proposed development. As staff has indicated, we had extensive discussions with them with regards to the access and the limitation of the access on Chicago Avenue to minimize the impact on the traffic flow and the pedestrian flow on Chicago Avenue. The majority of the access will be taken in and out of the alley for the residents and for the retail customers of the proposed development. We have also modified the building at the corner of the alley and in order to improve the sight lines for the vehicles exiting the alley onto Main Street. And we've also set back the building and the surface parking area 10 feet from the alley, again, to improve the vehicular traffic and truck traffic in and out of the proposed development.
Thank you, Louis. Mr. Chairman, based on our testimony and the exhibits, and I would ask that we had provided, all of our consultants have provided reports that you've received, and that all be incorporated into the record, that between our testimony and our exhibits that we've demonstrated that the proposed plan development consisting of the mixed-use commercial residential building at the corner of Chicago Avenue and Main Street meets the criteria for granting a special use as set forth in Section 6-3-5-10 of the zoning ordinance. And I want to thank the staff. We've worked closely with the City of Evanston staff. As Louis mentioned, we worked closely on the traffic. We've had 3 community meetings. We've had the Spark meetings, where we've gotten some good input from the community and from staff, and we've been able to go back and I think develop a plan that really is something that we can all be proud of on our team. I know some of the upgrades that were done in terms of the design and some of the architectural features to really make this a unique building that I know my client and all of us on the team are very proud of. We met with Design Evanston, who supports our project as well, met with the Main Street merchants. We had no objections to this project, and we really are requesting that you support our project. We're available to answer any additional questions that you might have or any additional questions that perhaps the public might have. And I just want to thank you for your time.
Let me ask a question of Mr. Aboon. I believe you, and you'll have to tell me if I'm correct, you stated that the project, if built, would not cause undue traffic congestion.
Correct.
Could you explain generally how you reached that conclusion?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. And, you know, we have a diagram on the board here that shows the proposed operation of the proposed development. So, if I may, just to go over it quickly, and that maybe will help answer the question. I think one of the main issues that we had a lot of discussions with the staff is the design of the access on Chicago Avenue. Initially, we were looking for full movement access at this location to enable cars enter and exit the site. Staff had concerns about that design and the impact that it would have on Chicago Avenue vis-a-vis cars waiting to make a left in or make a left out. And staff correctly pointed out that this is a significant issue, particularly with the proximity to the signal at Chicago and Main. So we went back to the design and redid the plan so that this access would only serve as a ride out only. and all the other traffic would use the alley behind the building here, which, as I said earlier, we also did a couple of design modifications at the corner of the building here to improve the sight lines, and then also set back the building and the parking lot 10 feet to create, while it doesn't necessitate widening the alley, but it just creates more elbow room for cars to move and for the trucks to be able to back in and out of the loading area. But to answer your question specifically, the amount of traffic this development is going to generate is going to be reduced considerably because of the proximity to the train station. When we looked at the census data for this area in general, we found that only 60% of the people in this area drive to work, and the rest of them walk or more than likely use public transportation. We see that similar traffic characteristic occurring for this proposed development, so those trips are going to be reduced considerably. The second thing is with the access being on the alley, traffic will split in three directions when they exit the site. Cars making a right-hand turn, cars going north, going out onto Main Street and going south and going out on Kedzie Avenue. So now we're dispersing traffic in multiple directions. And then the other thing is we are improving the capacity of the Chicago Avenue intersection by creating this northbound right-hand turn lane with the elimination of the 4 parking spaces. So similar to what's out there to the southbound direction, we're creating a similar lane here in the northbound direction to help the movement of traffic on Chicago and reduce some of the delays at the intersection. And then with all that taken into account, when we looked at how this intersection operates today, and then with the additional traffic from our proposed development, we found that level of service will be maintained. The increase in the delays will be very insignificant, and your traffic, the city's traffic engineer verified that in his report that, will not have significant impact on the operation of the intersection. So I believe based on all of the above, the opinion will be that it will not be, there will be no significant impact.
Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr.
I don't know
Ford.
if you can see that I'm on or not. You said you looked at surrounding properties and determined that what percentage of people drive to work?
60%.
Do you have any information based on surrounding properties of what percentage of the households own a vehicle?
We did not look at that. We looked at the travel characteristics of those residents in terms of how they commute to work on a daily basis, but we did not specifically look at the auto ownership of these units, no.
Mr. Chairman?
At some point, Mr. Chairman, can we get into the issue of parking?
Yes. Either this witness or a different witness can address it, or perhaps there is no testimony about it.
I have another question on the parking. Should I?
Who should we? Who would
We can,
address the
if you want to ask the questions, I'll try to direct
On the
who's the
traffic.
best. As far as the parking
Sorry, I meant traffic.
on traffic.
Go ahead.
There's another bus that is on Chicago Avenue that wasn't mentioned in the study. Northwestern has an intercampus shuttle that stops at that park, and I'm concerned that people exiting the north end of the alley turning left will block a lot of traffic. It's very often crowded anyway at that where the alley empties into Main
here.
Street. And my third question is, what are the ages of the people you hope will move into this building versus the long-term older neighbors? Because the age of the tenants may mean that their car use is very different from the people who are long-term residents of the area.
Well, let me address the first 2 points. The first one with the Northwestern, that's a good point, and obviously that would emphasize even more that people may not rely on their vehicle for transportation. The second issue with the main and alley, as I indicated, we have modified the building corner to improve the sight lines so people are, exiting the alley will be able to see better as far as pedestrians and traffic. And you're right, at certain times of the day during the rush hour, traffic on Main Street has a tendency to back up at the light and occasionally block the alley. But based on our observations, based on the counts that we conducted, A, those queues clear, B, people are currently using the alley and able to turn out of the alley onto Main Street. We're not anticipating a lot of traffic coming out of this development. We project a maximum of one car every 2 minutes added to the alley. That's not a lot of increase in traffic. And again, people will have the option of either using the Chicago Avenue exit, come down to Kedzie, or come out to Main Street. So we have a lot of flexibility, and the residents of this building, if they happen to drive, they'll learn in time the best way to get in and get out of the site. And then the last question, I'll defer to John.
Yeah, John.
48% of the people in the area, in the immediate half-mile radius, are renters, and we would hope to follow that population. Now, we anticipate getting people who might be moving up from Lincoln Park or Wrigleyville, couples that have become accustomed to using public transportation, but as they get older and think about having children, want to move to a suburb such as Evanston, we'd afford them that opportunity. This particular demographic often doesn't have any cars at all, and I think this is a transportation-oriented development where, in many cases, well, the ULI suggests it could be as little as 50% of a normal parking requirement. So we're anticipating that. But we also think there will be empty nesters interested in this. We are trying to build to that quality level. I mean, this isn't intended to be a student housing by any means, and it really is for families and older people. 49 of the 112 units are 2 or 3 bedrooms.
Chairman?
Mr. Ford?
I think it would, I mean, there's an empirical question here, and that is, given comparable properties in the neighborhood, what is automobile ownership? Your assumption, if I understand the numbers correctly, you're asking for 2 spaces, 2 residential spaces for every 3 units. And I'd be interested to know how you arrive at that as a reasonable number. It strikes me as, particularly in that neighborhood where parking is already very tight, I think you're making a heroic assumption.
John, if you want to come up, I know just... There's surface spots as well as the below-grade spots, and I think it comes to 103, 104 out of 112 units. And I think many of the buildings in the neighborhood don't have any parking whatever. We did study other buildings, 1717 Ridge, for example, which is less than 1-to-1 parking. What's the other one? The Reserve as well does not have 1-to-1 parking. I was involved in Park Evanston, and I think we built almost 1-to-1 parking, but didn't have more than 60% used. So I don't think it's necessarily that great in demand. I think it's exacerbated by the fact that a number of buildings don't have any parking whatever, and that creates a parking shortage.
Will the parking spaces be shared? The residential, I'm sorry, the spaces serving commercial and retail be shared with residents?
Yeah, we think that the retail will only use those spaces during the day, and then in the evening that'll be used by residential spaces. They'll be used by permit.
Other questions?
Yes. Oh, we have 2 lights on here.
Go ahead.
I looked, we recently had a building open south of there, the Amway building. I looked for documentation, but I think I recycled it. What was the parking car ratio, do we know, for that building? Because that's a mixed-use building that is pretty well occupied, I believe, and just wanted to know what...
Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what the parking ratio was for that one. However, with the previous planned developments in transit-oriented areas over the last, say, 10 to 15 years, we have typically had about a 1-to-1 parking ratio.
And this is below it. So then, there was testimony that you don't believe there's going to be significant impact to traffic. Was that for a 24-hour period? Was that for rush hour? What periods was this for?
Commissioners, typically we look at the peak hours, and we looked at the morning commuter peak hour, the evening, and then Saturday midday. Those are the time periods that typically exhibit the highest amount of traffic. So we looked at those 3 time periods as what typically we do in traffic studies and as your city engineering department would expect us to do.
So I get dropped off at the Main Street Metro Station at rush hour. And traffic can be backed up for blocks in all directions. I don't see how adding this many vehicles to the mix at rush hour really has no impact during that time period. I can understand it during the day, but during rush hour, it's pretty bad there right now. And so you're telling me that your studies say there'd be a negligible impact?
Well, bad is a relative term. I will say...
I think your own study says it's at least 1 signal or 2 signals?
There are certain movements, particularly on Main Street, that require more than 1 cycle to clear. Not every vehicle, but typically the one that arrive at the end of the queue, there is a very good probability they have to wait 1 cycle to clear. Chicago Avenue tends to get more of the green time because you got an interconnect system to move the traffic in north and south direction. Adding the northbound right turn lane on Chicago is going to help. We have suggested that at some point in the future the city re-examines the green time allocation for that intersection, that perhaps some additional green time be given to Main Street to help alleviate what you're experiencing on Main Street. But I think just to put in relative terms, the intersection of Chicago and Main during the evening peak hour carries 1,800, just above 1,800 cars during that 1 hour period. We're projecting to add 30 cars during that same time period. So just from a relative number standpoint, that number doesn't even meet what the daily fluctuation of traffic that intersection normally sees on a daily basis. So we're really not adding a lot of traffic to that intersection. So when I say negligible in relative terms, it's not going to alter the operations of the intersection. And in fact, we believe with the additional right turn lane, it might even improve it slightly, if not keep it under current conditions.
Chairman?
There was some testimony regarding green space, that you will be offering green space. The only thing I heard about green space was something on the roof. Is that what you were referring to?
No, in addition, we're going to, along Chicago Avenue, we're going to comply with the streetscape ordinance, so we're going to increase the width of the...
Any development has to do, so it's not something you're doing specifically in addition to, as a benefit to the neighborhood.
Well, I do think it is a benefit because we are providing additional landscaping that we're providing, as well as additional width along Chicago Avenue. In terms of, we're not utilizing that space. It's open for public use, and it's going to make that wider Chicago Avenue space.
Staff, isn't that a requirement for development there? This is not something that, I'm trying to look at the benefits for the city for the development.
The Chicago Avenue Streetscape Plan is a requirement for new development along Chicago Avenue. So it is a requirement. However, there is a benefit to the public by having that. But additionally, they are talking about having the landscaped terrace, which would be partially visible from Main Street and I believe also from Chicago Avenue.
So the terrace is on the roof of the first floor, correct? For use by the tenants of the building, correct? Not by anybody from the city to use that terrace?
Correct. It's for the residents and the tenants of the building.
And then additionally, we are under discussion for a public benefit of a payment that would go towards the improvement of St. Paul's Park on the west side of Chicago Avenue.
Absolutely, and we're committed to improving that park.
I have one more question for staff. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
I'm concerned about the use of the alley. And When I hear that they can take a right and then go all the way down the alley to Kedzie to make an exit, I understand garages using alleys, but we're talking about also retail using the alley for coming in and out. And, we all have, except my house, have, garages on alleys. And I understand that. To me, this seems unusual that we would have a building of this size and magnitude have the major entrance and exit off an alley like this. And I know when I walk Main Street, I love that neighborhood. It's an amazing neighborhood. And it's one of the gems of our city.
Are you asking a question of
the
staff?
issue is I think that coming in and out of that alley on Main Street and going down Kedzie is a hazard to pedestrians.
Are you asking a question for staff?
You'll
have a chance to express
Do you not consider
opinions
that a hazard?
in deliberation. So that's a question to staff.
That's correct.
Staff does not consider that a hazard. We would consider it to be a substantial hazard to have a two-way curb cut on Chicago Avenue with traffic crossing over multiple lanes of traffic and backing up with blind spots in the intersection. Having traffic be able to divert through the alley and go out multiple locations where they could go north in the alley, south in the alley, or out through the right-only curb cut. We feel that with the ground level parking spaces being 30 spaces, I believe that was.
Yes.
That it won't be a substantial number of cars utilizing that. So with the diversion of the 3 different exits, that it won't be a hazard.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have 2 down here, Mr. Chairman.
Let me ask staff, don't we have a bike path coming up Chicago Avenue?
Yes, Chicago Avenue is a designated bike path.
And how's that affected, or how have we addressed the bike path in terms of the egress on Chicago Avenue, even though it's just a one-way turn? Aren't you crossing the bike path?
You would. It would be similar to the way that other curb cuts along Chicago Avenue function, where obviously vehicles would have to be aware of the bicycles going by.
Are there questions from people on my left?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've got a quick question. Patrick, what are some of the clients that you hope to attract to their retail space?
I can ask my client. I know that in conversation, they're looking for some of the national and regional chain, kind of the fast casual would be some of the types of clients or tenants that they would be seeking for the retail.
Okay, so then there's a possibility that one may be a CVS or a Walgreens, possible, right?
Probably not. The amount of retail space that's available is only about 12,000 square feet, so you're probably looking at smaller spaces, but I can defer to my client. John?
CVS was interested in the site, but they require a drive-through, which isn't permitted, so we abandoned discussions with them.
Okay, here's my reason. I saw in your proposal that at one time CVS had expressed an interest, and based on what you said, you just stated, had it not been a requisite that they have a drive-through, CVS will be a prime candidate for the site. Now, based on Patrick's testimony, you are requesting for 104 parking spaces, 74 dedicated to the tenants, and then 30 also dedicated to the customers who are patronizing. So not only
Shared
to
parking.
retail, but
Yeah.
also to their offices, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not to the offices, just for the retail. The office is going to be directed not to park on the site.
Okay. Well, see, here's the problem. What is in the binder is beautiful. Mm-hmm. There is no question about the design, the structure. I guess the issue comes in with the traffic, because that place is very congested, and I don't see how you can possibly regulate and tell patrons don't park here. I think people will park wherever they want to park, wherever it's convenient. So you are looking for a variance here, but the place is congested already, and also you are taking 4 parking meters off of the street.
Right.
So how do you it doesn't balance out?
Well, we are taking 4 parking meters off of the street, and, at least my observation is they're very rarely used, but we are paying for those over a permanent payment. This is a negotiation, and I think you can see in the public benefit that we've agreed that we will pay for those. There's not an issue on that. Relative to the number of parking spaces, we are talking about a shared parking situation where we are going to try to keep this open for retail, so we don't have a 2-hour, have some kind of limitation in how frequently it's used without payment. So it's intended, we're intended to bring a daytime use to the property. I think that's beneficial, and I think the other retailers in the area would approve of that as well. And we'll have parking. I don't think any other retailer, perhaps Amley has a few, but I don't think anyone else is providing any parking to retail on their own property.
Well, yeah, I think in certain instances, yeah. But in this particular case, I think the parking spaces that you are actually requesting for is not even sufficient to cover the people who actually live in the building or who live in the building, right?
Well, I think it's a shared parking concept. So to the extent people are driving to work, they're going to be, they'll be taking their car. And I think what we would do would be to limit the parking that would be at a different parking rate for the evening from when the retailers empty out 8 o'clock, say, to 9 o'clock in the morning. That's what we would at least anticipate. We're going to regulate that because we want it to be available for the retailers. And we don't anticipate to have that great a demand for the parking by the residents. Okay. But we'll accommodate it regardless.
I've got other questions that I'll wait later, but let me just ask you something simple. I know you make an effort to regulate it,
yes.
But assuming that, let's say, some of the people who have been assigned to park at this site happen to be, and this is just hypothetical stuff, let's say 5 of them happen to be off on that day and their cars are there, what do you do?
5 people who leave their cars there?
On the day that they are off.
Yes. So you're saying that they're violating their agreement, and if they have a license to park there in the evening, but they decide they're going to park there in the daytime, I suppose we could have it towed. I mean, I would.
And so basically, you may even ask them to move their car?
Yeah, we would ask them to move the car. I mean, I wouldn't anticipate, we'll expect people to pay for the parking below, and I would expect a very modest amount above. And we're not going to encourage people to park, frankly.
I think let's go to the right. Mr. Ford, did you have questions?
Did I just hear you say that occupants of the office floor will be asked not to park in the building?
Could you repeat the question, please?
I think I heard you say that occupants of the office floor will be asked not to park in the building.
Right, right.
My second question, I guess, the curb cut is exit only, is that correct?
Correct.
I can imagine that working for the residents, but I can see people wanting to use that retail space who are not routinely in and out of that building, trying to enter. How are you going to manage that? I'm seeing traffic, southbound traffic backed up on Chicago Avenue while people try to make what is, from your standpoint, an impermissible turn.
Right, and that was, we had significant discussions with the city engineer as well as Louis on how we accommodate that and how that's done in other development projects. So a lot of it's done by signage, but
are you asking how it's going to be enforced?
Yep.
Well, obviously the signage is going to be the key here in terms of for cars coming from Chicago. There'll be "Do Not Enter" signs. We're angling the driveway, so cars exiting will be forced into making a right-hand turn, and then will be signage there telling people that they're not permitted to make a left turn onto Chicago Avenue. So it's through signage and design.
I understand the no left turn coming out. What I'm concerned about is an attempted left turn coming in.
There will be signs clearly indicating there's a one-way exit only. Do not enter, no left turns from Chicago, and the driveway is going to be designed in such a manner, it's going to be a narrow driveway that's going to be very clear to a driver that it's an exit only.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I really want to see this project go through, but I'm really troubled by the parking. I was looking at the Neighborhood Planning Committee executive summary, and on page 3, paragraph 2, it says, new development. This was a document that was published in 2000. It said new development should include enough parking to avoid any negative impact on existing parking problems. Current studies make clear that the current minimum parking requirement of 1.0 per residential unit is not adequate. And I don't know how we get around that. Is it possible to go down to 2 floors below grade? That would satisfy me.
Well,
I mean, I know it's an expensive suggestion, but that would solve, in my view, the parking problem that I see existing.
Well, let me just step back. I'm not familiar with that study that you're looking at, but from 2000. I do know that, again, this is a transit-oriented development. The fact that what's appealing for this development is you have a Metra as well as a CTA. You have terrific public transportation, and that's the market in which they're seeking. So to add more parking spaces, what that's doing is that's just attracting more cars, and that's not the intent of this development, and that's not where the trend of this development is in the market that the developer is looking at and sees. That's just not the same. So I don't know from 2000 what the reports and what the statistics they were looking at and what the development trends were, but in 2014 what's very appealing about this, I mean, even for LEED certification, which the building is seeking, you get additional points for LEED certification by being close to a transit or being a transit-oriented development.
I understand that. Mr. Chairman, if you would permit one follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Has anyone checked with the development to the south? I believe they have 250 or so rental units down there. Do we know what their parking situation is and how many cars the tenants have? I'm sorry? Okay.
State your name.
I'm Jeff Clark. I'm with John O'Donnell's office. We don't believe that the Emily development is fully occupied yet, or we would have checked the same thing. But as we mentioned before, our management partner on this project is going to be Atlantic Realty, who developed the Reserve, as well as 1717 Ridge. Richard Aronson, principal at Atlantic, allowed me to say today that neither of those projects has a parking ratio occupancy of 1-to-1. Both of them are both around 95%. Our project, if you include the surface parking and the below-grade parking, is 93%. We also have a much more proximity to transit potential with the CTA and the Metra. So in terms of ratios, we think we're very close to what is already occurring in other parts of Evanston.
May I please?
Go ahead.
Those other developments, do they have retail? Because we are not at 93% if you don't include retail, right? You're at 73 spaces for 74 spaces for 112 residential units. So I think the ratio is much lower than those other the other developments that you cited.
If I could just, when you're calculating those ratios, it's not just to divide by the number of units, because it's when those spaces are being occupied. This is at night, and so when you have a mixed-use project like this, it's really, you have the residents who will be utilizing their car, using it. There's going to be some that leave during the day, so those spaces are vacant, and at night, when the retail clears out, as Mr. O'Donnell indicated, those then become part of the residential, so you can't eliminate those from your calculation.
Yeah, well, a follow-up is, I have 2 cars. One of them sits in my driveway 5 days a week because I take the Metro downtown. So are you saying that people that might be taking the Metro downtown from this building wouldn't have a car or wouldn't have a need to keep the car for that 5 days a week parked?
I don't think that was the testimony.
I'm asking a question. I'm asking, I understand that they might not have said that. But if you are assuming that people with cars are going to be then driving those cars to work, to change the ratio during the day is what I think your testimony says. And I'm just trying to ask you if that's what you believe.
I think I was responding to a calculation or a question that you had. In terms of the market and who this development is going to attract and where we see the market, it's really a transit-oriented development. So as Mr. O'Donnell testified earlier, we're looking at those professionals that don't own cars. Many of those residents that we're going to attract are those individuals, those professionals that do take public transportation. So in those cases, they won't own any vehicles.
There are questions.
Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, first, I live in this area. My kids go to Lincoln School, which is 2 blocks away. I frequent this area a lot. I am in favor of this site being developed. It is totally consistent with the intended use for this site. I am familiar with Mr. O'Donnell and his background and history. He's done significant and very successful projects from a usability standpoint and otherwise. What I'm having a hard time grappling with is this. From our perspective, the developer can only do what the market allows him to do for his site. And the TIF issue came up, and while the money is not relevant to determining what we need to do, what is relevant about the TIF is it contains the use standards, and it's something that we have to consider. But what I don't understand is this is the last major corner at this intersection. And the TIF study that was done in 2003 says if you just do a search of the word parking in it, it's all over the place. And one of the objectives in the TIF study is to provide, and I'm quoting, off-street parking and public parking facilities. Well, it's not the developer's responsibility to provide parking for everybody and for residential properties that don't provide parking. It's just not. What I don't understand is why aren't we using any of the TIF dollars to encourage a very good project to have additional parking like we do in 2 parking lots in downtown Evanston that are sponsored by Evanston. To me, this is not a problem, but an opportunity, because there's lots of people who actually would be encouraged, and I started doing it when I got tired of getting tickets parking downtown. I said, you know what, I give up. So I've got the monthly parking in the downtown Evanston parking lot, encouraged by others, and it's great because you have a place, it encourages you to go downtown more. To me, this is an opportunity within this particular node right here to encourage a developer in a public-private way to use some TIF dollars and add more parking. More people will come, more people will spend money, and it'll be to the benefit of everybody in the area. So maybe my question is more to City Council, but I don't understand why we aren't helping this developer provide more parking. Can anybody speak to that? Anybody want to?
I see others with questions if there's no one that wants to address this.
Nobody
And I could
wants to
understand
speak to that point.
why the developer isn't addressing that at this time. Seth?
Yeah, we can address it. I mean, I wasn't sure if the commissioner was talking to the city or for because we don't control, obviously, on the city side, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the city. We can only talk about what we've been doing, what we've been trying to do. And there's been, as Ms. O'Donnell will testify to, there's been a lot of discussions over the years on what was going to go on in this development, and it's evolved over time, and we're trying to be responsive to not only what the market is, but also what the city is looking for in terms of their planning as well.
I think you have been responsive, and my question, if I haven't made it clear, I think it's crystal clear. I don't understand why we aren't using TIF dollars to embrace this particular development and developer with this project. I just don't understand it, because we obviously are. I don't understand why we aren't taking an extra step further. This is a great opportunity.
Well, I think there is TIF dollars embracing this project to $3 million, which is what you requested.
Right, that was...
Now, the question is, what is that going towards? And I think you've said towards the retail space.
Toward the office space.
Yeah,
not
towards the
retail
office space.
Yes,
I think that's what you've said. And if we look at what Commissioner Updike was saying, the concern is that the place is really congested. So that is where I think the anxiety is, and that is where I think the effort ought to go towards alleviating a lot of those things.
Well, there was a discussion at one point about a public garage, but I think that is, some of the concerns here that were raised was the amount of traffic that's generated. Clearly, if there was a public garage, I think that was one of the concerns, that it would just create more congestion in the area, which is one of the other problems, right? So, the idea of doing a transit-oriented development, I thought was very appealing, at least to me. I mean, it reduces the carbon footprint, and the government pushes this. If you look at most of the developments of new residential buildings in the city, they're 40 to 60% ratio on units to parking. And it's simply because younger people don't use as much parking as they used to. And not the people in my age group, where we have multiple cars and we leave one home and go to work on the train. They don't have cars because they're very expensive and they find it unnecessary. So they like to live along the red line. And we think that could benefit, us and the city. And there's plenty of literature, and we'd be happy to give it to you from the ULI and others that say that there's a great deal of reduction that would be in parking. Now, we're going to charge for parking, and I don't think people are going to, rent it if they don't need it. And I think we're also going to probably appeal to people who are living along that line. That's been our basic plan from the beginning. And on the other side of the coin downtown, everybody wants to be office buildings near L-tracks for that same reason, to attract these highly educated younger people who don't typically drive. Anyway, that's the plan.
Go ahead.
Typically, you are asking for, I think maybe I should hold this for discussion.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. I'm just kind of wanting to get an idea about the viability of your shared parking concept. Everyone's been talking about the 1-to-1 ratio or 93% ratio to residential parking, and maybe this question is for staff, who's probably checking right now. What is the code requirements for office and commercial portion of this? Just to kind of balance to know the daytime usage versus the nighttime usage.
Regarding the parking?
Parking, yeah.
Give me 1 second.
While that's going on, can I have a clarification to how many parking spaces total are being lost? I know there's the 4 that are along Chicago Avenue, but was there some mention of some near the alley, or
no?
Or am I just okay? So
there's just the 4,
just 4 total.
at Chicago.
The typical parking requirement For the residential, it's based on the number of bedrooms for each dwelling unit. So for this specific proposal, it would come out to about, let's see, 78 spaces for the studios and one bedrooms, 63 spaces for the two bedrooms, and 14 spaces for the three bedrooms. For the retail, we require one space per 350 square feet of gross floor area. And we also give a 2,000 square foot exemption for that. So that comes out to a total of approximately 28 parking spaces. And then for the office use, we require 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. So that comes out to about 31 parking spaces. So that's how altogether we come out to a requirement of 216 parking spaces.
Okay, of which the 28 plus 31 is a 59 commercial office-driven spaces.
Correct.
So how does that balance with so my question is the subgrade parking also available to daytime use, or is only the surface parking, the 32 spaces?
It's just the 30 spaces.
Just the
surface.
30 spaces. So
Yes.
we've got, in theory, almost 60 spaces in demand and 30 that are available. Is that?
That is correct. One thing to take into account is the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance do not exactly take into account transit-oriented developments and the proximity to things like the CTA and metro station. So that is why oftentimes with planned developments, when we are located close to those stations, we do allow that parking ratio to go down.
Okay.
Other questions at this time? We've been going for an hour and a half. I suggest we take a break approaching 10 minutes. And at that point, we'll take any more questions from the commissioners and questions from the public, and following that, comments from the public. So we'll resume in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
attractiveness to the train station, so they're going to probably come in and they're not going to have a car.
I have a little car. Everybody has a car. Right. There's 2-bedroom apartments, 2 cars.
Well, again, that's a different market.
We'll begin in 2 minutes.
My son lives in the city. He lives in every train station. He doesn't even dream of one car. Because he can get around. He'll come up here. Maybe one the day. He might.
Watch your stuff. You gotta be careful.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you could probably do is buy some of those, commit to some of those parking spaces. And then run a valet service for their people.
Right.
Crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but that's another alternative. I like tandem parking.
I do.
Like they do in Japan. Yeah.
They do in New York too.
Oh, yeah, New York they do it serious. They stack.
It was.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I think I opened it up too much.
Well, this has got people's juices flowing. I like that. In concept, I like it.
Gunfights in Iraq. That was my spot.
You know, we shouldn't joke about why, because the road rage is killing you.
Well, there is.
The problem is Seth has 2 cars. That's the problem. Yeah. He needs to sell one of them. Yeah.
So we are ready to resume the testimony. Let me first ask if any commission members, now having thought about this, have any other questions? Let me ask, seeing no questions and no red lights, if members of the public have questions, we'll do questions first and then chances to make statements and comments and give evidence. But first, questions. Stuart?
Are there any samples of the bricks that you are going to use, and any of the granite that's going to be used at grade?
Yes, we do have some of the samples here.
How thick is the granite going to be?
Defer to the architect. Okay. Don, if you can respond.
Yeah, maybe I can use the mobile. Thank you. This is a sample board of the brick that is proposed and was actually discussed with the Site Plan and Appearance Review Committee in their reviews. There was a little bit of multiple selection that we offered, and they expressed some preferences, and that's the brick that we're moving forward with.
How thick is the brick? I mean, on that little...
Well, this is a sample board, obviously.
Yeah. How thick are the bricks?
It's modular brick, so it's a 2.5-inch thick brick, like a standard brick.
Is that standard, 2.5 inches?
2.5 or 3, yes. Not exactly. It's nominally that size.
Okay.
But it would be a standard. It's called modular brick.
Okay. And tell me about the granite.
It's not actually granite. It's a glazed ceramic product, which is sort of the closest we come in the 21st century to terracotta, which you'd see featured prominently on the Lucky Platter building in certain architectural
May I see
features.
that, please?
Of course.
I think the proposal did use the word granite. Now, on the base, is that?
Oh, there is a base of granite, which is how high? About 30 inches high, and that would be, in that application, it would probably have to be 3 centimeters, which is an 1.25 inches thick.
1.25 inches?
Yes. And that would be attached to a masonry block backup.
So this is just...
This happens above.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
right, okay. That's modern-day terracotta.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same product as terracotta. It just doesn't come in those beautiful shapes anymore.
Could you do 4-inch or 5-inch granite at the base instead of an inch or a half-inch? I know you can do it. Are you prepared to do that kind of thing?
Well, I think we'd be prepared to do it, but it's not necessary. The attachment methods that you would use for granite these days is to use a wire and plaster connection to the backup, which would be concrete block. It would be solid, it would be durable, and it's a typical detail.
Okay. There are some buildings in downtown Evanston that have 4-inch granite bases, and they look wonderful, and they are very durable. I am very skeptical about anything that's an inch or less, frankly, and I'm not an architect.
No, I understand. And it's technically, I think it's 1 1/4 is 3 centimeters. 2.5 centimeters is an inch, so it's about 1 1/4. And what we would do, probably, what you're seeing is the depth of the granite and the way it's shaped? Is that what you're seeing on the buildings downtown?
Well, I see granite bases that are maybe 3 feet wide and 4 or 5 inches deep, thick.
And you can see that thickness,
yes,
right?
you can. You can see it.
Is it a newer building or an older building?
Well, it's within 10 years. Within 10
Oh, really?
years.
Okay.
Within the Barnes, I think it's Barnes and Noble, and then the building to the south of that.
We'll definitely take a look at that.
It's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
We would definitely take that under advisement, for sure.
We put in 1.5 or I think it was 3/4 inch bricks, sidewalk bricks, and we found out what happened to those after about 2 winters. And I'm not suggesting that would happen here, but I just like real thick granite that's going to last for a long, long time. I mean, the building to the east of you, it's been around for almost 100 years.
Right.
Maybe 90 years or something like that, and it's still there, and it's still in pretty good shape.
It's a beautiful building, and that's the reason we were selecting this product to establish a relationship with.
I like the terracotta. I'm not so enthusiastic about the 1 1/4 granite. Okay. So just think about it.
We will definitely take it under advisement. Thank you.
I'm going to ask staff to mark the bricks as Exhibit 4, the granite as Exhibit 5, and the ceramic as Exhibit 6. So that sometime later it's more clear what was referred to. Other questions? 4, 5, and 6, I think, is where we are. Hearing no other questions, are there questions that the public wishes to ask of any of the witnesses? And bear in mind, there is a chance after the questions for the public to make statements that are not questions. Yeah. Can you come to the podium and identify yourself and explain whether you've been sworn and...
My name is Hee-Kyung Sung, and I live in Church Street, and my girlfriend lives in 515 Main Street. And I'm an architect and licensed architect since 2009. According to the zoning code of Evanston, they ask elevations for the presentation, but I don't see any elevation along the street. Chicago Street, Main Street. I only see the plans and the perspectives. So we cannot tell the exact relationship between building and adjacent building.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's the adjacent buildings? They ask the street, along the street, not the only building.
The elevations only indicate our project.
If you can switch to the perspective view, the surrounding buildings are visible in the perspective views.
So this is looking north along Chicago Avenue. One thing that might not be clear in this view, but this surface of our building is 20 feet north of the lot line that adjoins this two-story brick building to the south.
Right, that's why I'm asking, I'm just wondering if there's an elevation showing the context of the building within the community. The always perceive distort the relationship, so.
Let me ask the spelling of your name, and I didn't remember if you said you were sworn on oath.
Yeah, my name is Hee-Kyung Song.
Could you spell it for us?
Heekyung Sung.
Thank you. And you were sworn
Yes.
earlier?
So that's the question.
Do you have other questions?
The only building that our project is directly adjacent to is this building to the south. The other three sides are Chicago Avenue, Main Street, and the alley to the east. So we're not directly adjacent to any other properties. The building to the north, which is the brick building directly across Main Street, is 98 feet tall, which is 1 foot taller than our building. And the building to the east across the alley where the Lucky Platter is located is 75 feet tall.
Yes, but the major concern is about the...
Just questions.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Ford, do you have a question of
No,
this?
Mr. Copper asked my question, which was the height of the building immediately to the north, where the bank is. You're saying it's a foot taller than your building.
That is our understanding, yes. I mean, the only reason I say that is I haven't actually gotten out there and measured it, and I don't have a copy of their documents, but that from various sources.
I believe it is 98 feet.
Yeah, we believe that, yes.
And the speaker identifying that building as 105 feet, I believe is the alderman, who has measured all the buildings. Thank you. Other members of the public have questions? Maybe. Do you have questions?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. You had said there's 20 feet between your building and the building south?
Between this surface of our building, in other words, the residential units.
Okay, not the actual base of the building will go flush to.
That's correct.
Thank you. Could you identify
How
your...
is that base? Then is it?
That
line
base
with the roof of
is, it's 24 feet high.
So for 24 feet, it is aligning flush with the.
That's correct.
And the answer is being given by the architect. Can you identify yourself and where you live, and also spell your name?
My name is William Cannon. Last name is Cannon. I'm with Skirmahorn and Company. I'm the property manager of the 515 Main Street condominiums. My question is, and I don't know who's controlling the slides, but if we go back to when we were talking about traffic, you had a color slide there showing Chicago and the left turn lane, right turn lane. The one with the arrows. Thank you. That's it. Up between 515 Main Street and Chicago, or 900 Chicago, the right turn lane that is not there now, but we're proposing it. Is there a right turn lane there now? Going south, there is one. There's a right turn lane?
There is, I think there is.
Southbound, there is a left turn arrow from Chicago Avenue on.
Is there a right turn lane? I didn't think there.
Going southbound on Chicago Avenue at the intersection, you don't need a right turn arrow.
There's no arrow, but I think there's a lane.
So am I to understand, according to this shot, that there would be a right turn designated lane created on Chicago, in front of 900 Chicago, turning to go west on Main, that is not there now?
Let me ask staff.
There is an existing. Let them ask. There.
I'm sorry.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, Louis Abuna. Currently, there is an existing southbound right turn lane. What the alderman was referring to is the left turn arrow in the signal, traffic signal. You know, you have an exclusive left turn arrow for people making left-hand turn. There is no exclusive arrow for people to make a right-hand turn on the signal, but the lane is painted on Chicago Avenue going southbound. And what we're doing is we're creating a similar situation in the northbound direction.
Okay, and are there parking spaces in front of 900 Chicago coming up to?
As it exists today, this lane exists, and therefore there is no parking.
Very, very short stacking space.
It's very short.
Very short.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
there's metered.
The right-hand lane is very short. I know because
Okay, so the intent is not to eliminate the parking spaces to put the right turn lane in?
I think that's correct.
We're not recommending any changes to Chicago Avenue north of Main Street. Whatever exists today remains. The only modification is in front of our property. In
front of your property. Okay, great. Would there be any modifications to the parking spaces on Main Street adjacent to your property?
We're not recommending any changes.
Okay. Would all deliveries be done for the commercial property? Would they be done off the alley in the back of the building at the loading dock? There would not be any deliveries on Main or Chicago?
That's correct.
That was my concern, because there's no loading areas there, and we already have trouble at 515 Main Street with the trucks parking in the alley. So thank you for answering my questions.
Other questions? Hearing no questions, are there comments from the general public? Please come forward and identify yourself. Explain if you have been taken the oath to tell the truth, and give your address.
My name is Jim Ludwig, Ludwig. I live at 515 Main, directly north of this proposed project, since the beginning of when the building was built 12 years ago. I'm also a licensed real estate broker for 39 years in Illinois here. And I wasn't asked to do an oath of any kind so far, but I do tell the truth.
Tell the truth and
I
the whole
promise,
truth.
yes. So my comments would be that I haven't heard, these guys are really excellent presenters for putting the best view that they possibly could for their project, and that's their job. I want to thank you, commissioners, for being so skeptical and correct in your perceptive questions in looking at more of a realistic result of the building as they've proposed it. I think that the city staff has given testimony that there probably should be around 200 or so parking spaces correctly for this proposed occupancy of both business, commercial, residential, and office. So I would hope that we wouldn't allow, or that you guys would vote to not do a variance to have less parking, even though the story is that because we're right across from the train, there aren't so many cars around. But there, for every bedroom in the building across the street, there is a car. So if you go by their standards, they're correct in having, for every bedroom that they're going to build, there should be a parking space. And I think that this view here that we have is deceptive, and we should have a continuance or something and get a correct view of that intersection, because that isn't the way that intersection looks for people that are driving and coming through that intersection. That would give you a very wrong idea of what is proposed. And the last thing I would say is that the alley behind this building and behind 515 Main is a treacherous alley already by traffic use because of the bank, because of the Starbucks. And I can tell you, if not every day, at least every other day, I have to fight to get a guy out of a truck that's delivering to those businesses around there just to get into my alley parkway there. And Starbucks was previously required to have a police officer there to manage it. We don't have that anymore, if at all. And that was like the minimum that we were going to be requiring to have a safe situation for the students that go through there for school, for the residential handicapped building that's just to the west of there. There's a lot of handicapped people that you walk to and from the lake along there. So you're going to create even a worse safety situation if this thing gets built the way they're proposing it. And I would strongly urge that you stick to the requirements and stick to what's not a variance. Don't grant a variance to reduce the parking. We really need it. There's the last thing, I'm sorry, is there's a long waiting list for all the parking spaces in those city lots around there right now, and those aren't served now. If this guy could create a lot more parking, then at least those waiting lists could be put to bed, and people would have a place to put these cars. Thank you very much.
Melissa, was your testimony correctly characterized by this witness?
To clarify, the 200 approximate spaces that were referred to, that is the as-of-right requirement, parking requirement. I also noted that typically for planned developments, we take that ratio down to approximately 1.0. That's what's been done in the past.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Please come forward, identify yourself.
Hi, my name is John Ruckdeschel, spelled, excuse me, Ruckdaeschel. I own a property at the 515 Main condos, which are directly across from the proposed development.
Were you sworn?
I was sworn, yes. Thanks. So I had a couple comments. I'm concerned about two aspects of the zoning exemption that you're asking for. One is the height of the building. I think the property values at 515 Main Street, and there are some other owners here as well, will be adversely affected. The light will be affected with the taller building. It's going to be 30 feet taller, I believe 97 feet instead of 67 feet. And that is definitely a negative attribute and a concern that I have. My other big concern is parking. I've been a real estate broker for 20 years, and so I'm familiar with the properties in the area. There are, for example, the 525 Kedzie building, which you may be familiar with, a block south. It was constructed about 5 years ago, originally as condos. The developer went bankrupt, and it is currently a rental building that was recently acquired by Isaiah Enterprises, Isaiah and Thomas's corporation. They have 20 units there, probably a similar demographic in terms of fit and finish, new construction, in-unit laundry, central air, probably attracting a similar type of tenant that the proposed building would attract. They have a shortage of parking. I spoke to the property manager today. She herself can't park in her own building because she has not enough spots for her tenants. She authorized me to say this, by the way. She's got 24 parking spots for 20 units. So that means that most units only have one spot. She has a lot of tenants who do take the train, but they still have a car because they can't get to all the, Target, Old Orchard, whatnot, by transportation easily, or at least they choose to drive. And oftentimes she has people where maybe one roommate or one of a couple works in the northern suburbs at Abbott or State Farm or one of these corporate headquarters, and so they still rely on their car. 800 Hinman was a property that was recently significantly renovated. I've spoken to that property manager as well. 800 Hinman would be the corner of Hinman and Kedzie. They have a waiting list currently of close to 20 people, where previously they didn't have a waiting list for parking. The reason is they renovated all the units. They've attracted a more affluent demographic now who is more likely to have a car. So there are definitely parking concerns. I think that once the Amley building is fully occupied, I understand right now it's about 60% occupied, that will also put more pressure on the neighborhood for people visiting the shops and restaurants, perhaps visiting family or friends who live in these properties. So I think, and from your comments, I perceive that you are concerned about the parking as well. I guess those are my comments. Thank you.
Questions of this witness?
Your name again, sir?
Yeah, my name is John Ruckteschall.
Want to spell that one?
Yeah, sure. Ruckdaeschel. And I would actually echo the comments of Jim Ludwig as well. I do know that there are long wait lists for the parking lots that the city manages on Hinman Avenue, and a lot of the courtyard buildings there they were constructed during the 1920s at a time where there was not parking really is a concern, perhaps a few Model Ts around, and so a lot of these people don't have the ability to park off-street, unlike in downtown Evanston where you've got some of the city-owned parking garages that can take some of that overspill. In southeast Evanston, that opportunity does not exist, and because of the wait list at the city lots, it puts people in a bad position. Any other question?
Well, John, you live at 515. What is the parking situation now?
Yeah,
What is the street parking situation?
And just to clarify, I actually own a unit there, but I don't reside in it. I currently actually have a tenant in there who has 2 cars and has to park one on the street. When I go to visit the property to check up on things, sometimes I have difficulty parking. I usually go during the day when parking tends to be a little bit easier. I may park 2 blocks east on Judson or on Main between Hinman and Judson.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Still William Cannon, Cannon, with Skirmahorn and Company, and I manage 515 Main Street. I'm at this property every day, so I see what goes on with the traffic there, and of course, have the pleasure of getting emails from all my residents regarding general issues related to living in a multifamily building. We do have problems with traffic on Main Street in the area. I get phone calls every other week from surrounding properties asking if we have any space to rent in our building, and we don't. We can't rent to outside people because it would be a security breach and allow them to the interior of the building. I also get phone calls. Some of those phone calls are from people that live in the 900 Chicago property that also has parking in their building, and they're still not quite enough. I actually have a lot of people that do use the public transportation. The fact of the matter is they don't sell their cars. They keep them. They keep them for the weekend. They keep them for leisure or whatever. I even have owners that have all electric cars, and we put the charging stations in, and they leave them parked there and they take public transportation. But the fact is, as green as they are, they still keep their cars. It's just the reality of what's going on there. Another aspect of that I can share with you is that about 30% of our condos are owned by off-site owners and rented out to renters, people that So I have, and all those renters have to come through our office, be processed through our office. So I have a today's view of people that are renting at that intersection because they are attracted to everything that brings these people to building a building here and saying that's going to attract people. And they all have cars, and they all need to put them somewhere. It's just the fact of the matter. And these are people moving from Chicago. They've done their living in the city thing. They're want to get where it's a little bit quieter but not too far away because of work, or they want to be able to get there socially because their friends are still there. Another aspect of it is the 9 to 5 thing. They're talking about sharing these parking spaces. The world has changed, and it's not, you know, dad leaves at 9 a.m. and comes home at 5:30 and dinner's on the table at 6 anymore. I think that shared parking idea is a little optimistic. We're a 24-hour society, and people are working all kinds of hours now. Some of those people are having to, you know, travel long distances, so that gap that they're gone, or that gap that they will leave their car there while they use public transportation, grows even longer, and it may not fit into the schedule. Nobody has a crystal ball. You, Commissioner Peters, you had asked for one of the gentlemen here to explain how they could substantiate the fact that this property would not have a negative impact on the surrounding properties. I don't know how anybody answers that. We do not have a crystal ball. The immediate impact may be because it's rental versus condominiums, but they said in their plan eventually they would like to sell these as condominiums. There are so many other factors involved. Nobody can honestly say whether it will have a negative impact or not. But their statement is that they're saying that it won't, and I don't know how anybody could really substantiate that because none of us can see into the future. And I think a lot of the information that they're providing here, they've done studies, they're licensed, they're expert, but I think that they are falling on a very positive side of all their predictions. You're talking about an alley being used, purposely used as a thoroughfare to exit the property. They're saying it's only going to be 30 cars. How do we know? I have two commercial spaces on the ground level of 515 Main Street, which is right across the street, the bank and Starbucks. Drive past that building on your way home now, that whole lot will be full. Not by anybody that the bank authorized to park in their parking space. And I will tell you, there are signs on every space that say you're going to be towed. They're saying, their comment about we'll control it with signage. There are signs everywhere, and we still have, you know, we all know that that's not the grand answer. The bank turns a blind eye to it because it's the local businesses in the area. They all have bank accounts there, and they don't want to offend any of the local businesses. And that's fine. That's their parking lot to do it. But it demonstrates the fact that there is a need for parking, even in the evening time, especially because of the businesses around there. So I just ask you, to me, hours have been put into your plan, into setting your ordinances. A lot of hard work went into that by a group of people, and God bless them for going through that process. If you're ever going to look at granting variances, you know, and I can see you guys are being skeptical and you're weighing things out, you know, please do it with this. But as I see it here, the biggest issue is the parking. And I get them dragging their feet on it. You know, that's going to cost them money. And these are rentals. They're not going to get it back right away. Great idea, Commissioner Asaro. Find a way to make it work. It's an opportunity, not a project killer. That would be fantastic. I think if you find a way to make everybody feel comfortable about the parking, you will have won most of your battle. Thank you.
I see someone has a question.
Yeah, William. Well,
meant no disrespect, Commissioner Steele. Thank you.
No problem. Behind your building, right, there are some on the ground level. There are some parking spots that are leased to the restaurants, right?
At a different property?
No, on 515 Main.
We have no underground parking.
Not underground, but you have parking right behind Starbucks.
Right, that's the bank parking lot.
Okay, but at night, those spots are not even open. They are leased to the restaurant down the street from you.
I'm not, I can tell you this, the bank owns that parking lot.
Okay.
So we have no relationship with that parking lot, even though it's under our building. The bank I have spoken to the bank. I inquired why our lot was filling up in the evening. And the bank allows the commercial business to do that because the commercial business keeps a checking account in their bank, and they don't want to offend them. And I can tell you when this came up is when the bank was purchased. And when the new bank owner said, who are all these cars? And that's when all this was worked out. The problem with it is that, which the bank has had to work out, is they blocked their drive-through for the 24-hour banking at the drive-through, but they've worked all that out, and that is up to them. It just demonstrates the need for parking, not only during the day, but in the evening and at night, in the whole area there, the whole neighborhood.
Well, can you, I've seen that a lot of the development, especially to Starbucks, takes place on the streets. And when that happens, they occupy some of those parking meters over there. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons is that if they try to park in the alley, nobody can actually turn in there. Can you talk about that?
If people park in the alley, they're actually blocking our garage doors. And I have residents who go to get in their car to leave to go to work, open their garage door, only to see the side of a car or a truck parked there. And they have no choice but to wait for the people to finish getting in line of wherever they're at and come back and move their vehicle. And we have signs up. It says no parking. You would think common sense would be the first thing. It's a garage door. But that doesn't do it. The signs don't do it. It's something we deal with every day. Yeah. Then we have the delivery trucks for the commercial spaces that can't park on Main Street. So they park in our alley. If there was an emergency, and these are trucks that sit there for an hour, and the ordinance allows their engines to run because they are commercially cooled vehicles with food inside. They'll sit there for an hour, hour and a half with the diesel fumes going up in the summertime into the windows. And I get complaints from my condo owners there, and I have to. So there's a lot of activity where that alley meets Main Street. Already today, without this building being built, it's already very, very busy, even if they built double the parking space in their building. So the comment, the offices are not, they're going to be asked to not park on site. I don't even know what you're going to do with that.
Well, then here's my question to you. You are not against this development. Your issue has to do with the parking, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. I think that's the big issue here.
Yeah, because you cannot be for 515 and not be for this. Your problem is the parking.
Yeah, the traffic. Yeah, the general congestion. Yeah, which I think has kind of been most of the talk here this evening. I think it's a shared concern.
Other questions? Other witnesses?
Thank you.
I saw someone. Please come forward. State your name and address and indicate if you've been sworn as a witness.
Thank you. My name is Gus Friedlander. It's spelled Friedlander. I am not sworn. I do swear to tell the truth. I live at 852 Hinman Avenue, which is one of the courtyard apartment buildings. On Hinman, it's the building immediately south of the Evanshire building, which houses the Lucky Platter and the Brothers K and half a dozen businesses there. That's a condominium building. I have lived there since 1995. I'm a lifelong Evanston resident, homeowner and taxpayer now. I've been all through the public school system. I have lived in this part of southeast Evanston most of my life since 1965, and I've seen tremendous changes across all that time. I have been in my place since 1995, and so I have seen the almost 20-year history of this prolonged process and various attempts at redeveloping this property. Over the long term, I have been living literally about 60 or 70 feet from this. There are a number of issues I don't know if you're aware of or have considered that do relate to the parking and the question of traffic. One is that the Avonshire building, which I think Alderman Wynn said is 75 feet tall, that consists of several hundred small rental apartments. Some of them, I believe, are even available for rental by the month. What that means is that there's pretty constant activity, which I witness out my dining room and kitchen windows, mostly smaller vans or mid-sized moving vans, people coming in and out. There's a lot of transients in and out of these large buildings. My own building is 44 units. It's condominiums. It's mostly one and some two-bedroom units. And as somebody else pointed out, that is a building also that has no dedicated parking, as indeed most of the courtyard buildings up and down Hinman and Judson do not have. I don't own a car myself. I take the Metra and the CTA, and I ride my bike. I work on Main Street in the block west of the tracks there, so I'm very local, and I can emphatically underscore the truth of what both Mr. Ludwig and Mr. Cannon have mentioned regarding the questions of congestion. It's already congested back there. There is a service drive behind the Avonshire between the Fountain Court building where I live and the Avonshire. There are about 7 or 8 dedicated parking spaces that are occupied either by the permanent building staff of the Avonshire. They have several staff members who work there during the day, the maintenance people and so forth, and the office, or by the people who own the businesses. All of their deliveries are made through that back entrance, and so most of the time at present, the traffic going up and down the alley is people coming making deliveries. There's every few minutes somebody is coming in or out of that little service drive, and that is the very same alley, the very same intersection, let us say, because it really is the intersection right next to the Lucky Platter. Any large-scale development on this corner, and nobody, I think, disputes that there's eventually going to be something built there. We all understand that. We will all miss the green space that we have had as a real treat for these last number of years. But something is going to be built there. You need to be especially sensitive to not only the question of the revenue that this will generate for the city. We all understand that that's important. But what happens subsequently? If you put in a building with 112 units, and as other people have pointed out, that is going to equal, I don't disagree with the notion of 1 bedroom per car. Maybe that's a little excessive, but with 112 units, at a very minimum, that is 112 cars, and I believe there's going to be significantly more than that. These are not going to be occupied by individuals. They're going to be occupied by, typically, I would imagine, by 2 or 4 people. I absolutely agree with the notion that was advanced by one of the other people here, that these people will, every one of them, have at least 1 car. They won't necessarily be driving it all the time. They certainly will be taking the Metra and the CTA. Some of them will be working in Evanston and will bike or walk. But they will have cars. Parking, I can testify firsthand, is very much at a premium through the whole neighborhood. My neighbors typically, if they come back in the early to mid-evening, have to park as much as 2 and 3 blocks away. This building will unquestionably further negatively impact, simply by virtue of the number of units, an already bad parking problem. Commissioner Asaro, I think the issue of whether there should be a public parking garage or some component of that involved in this project, I think that's essentially a separate issue, certainly germane to the Planning Commission. The more logical place for that, frankly, is on the other side of the tracks, in the behind Main Street. There's a large area there, ground level parking, a parking structure of some kind, could certainly, a public parking structure, long term, could certainly be put there. That is the logical place in the whole neighborhood for it. Furthermore, the issue of whether this tenant or any building that is built there, whether the purpose of that is to increase commercial traffic for the whole area, that's a separate issue. I do agree that this should be a mixed-use commercial and residential building. I take great exception to the height, the proposed height of this building. My brother's an architect. I've discussed these matters with him at length. He, like myself, is a lifelong Evanston resident. He's dealt with plenty of developers in the course of his 30-plus year career. He knows exactly and can speak in detail, and I may ask him to come before this commission at some point.
He's not here, so.
I know. I understand that. I do request an automatic.
Give your opinion.
I request an automatic continuance also, so that my neighbors.
That request would need to be in writing.
Yes, all right.
Just give it to either me or one of the staff members.
I'll be pleased to do so. Thank you. Thank you. You need to give serious consideration to a development that has, first of all, less height. You're creating a canyon there, which already exists to some extent, between 900 Chicago Avenue and 515 Main Street. The photographs that are given here are to some extent deceptive by virtue of the type of photography that is used, the type of lens. I don't know if one of you gentlemen is controlling this.
Do you want to change the slide?
Yes, please. Yes, the one, there we are. I'm sorry, could you back that up, please? All right. This is taken from the northwest corner opposite the Subway sandwich shop. It gives the impression that it's taken from approximately 100 feet away. This looks like a nighttime view. You had a daytime view with a bright blue sky of that. There we are. That's the one. All right. This was taken with a very wide-angle lens. This does not afford, as any photographer will tell you, anything approaching a realistic perspective upon what that actually looks like. It looks as if that building is approximately 100 feet away from where the photographer was standing. It's not possible to get this accurate view. The proposed building, as I understand it, is about 97 feet tall. Just to give you some example of how this is sort of distorted, the Evanshire, which you can see there in the background, is 75 feet. It's not an accurate view. There's a lot of blue sky in this picture by design. This gives the impression that it's much more isolated from its neighbors than, in fact, it will be. This building, whatever goes there, needs to be half as tall, and even at that, will be significantly taller than any of the buildings to the east. I think you need to be thinking much more in terms of something that is no higher than the Amley, which frankly is pushing it, in my opinion, and maybe more in keeping with the townhouses that are further to the south. These gentlemen here are about maximizing their profitability, which also, of course, represents revenue for the city. We all understand that. We all understand that something will be built there. There are too many units proposed here. It will create a traffic nightmare on top of what is already now a fairly busy intersection. As somebody mentioned, there has been, in fact, periodically a police officer stationed in front of the Starbucks to manage the traffic. That's at 515 Main Street. This is an unrelated situation to this. And because of the transients in the Evanshire building and also the other buildings up and down, these are multi-unit buildings. There are people moving in and out, and they need to come in through the alleys. And again, the parking problem. I could go on and on about this, but this building is too big. There's not enough parking, and the notion that this is not going to have a significant impact on traffic is simply a fallacy as far as I'm concerned.
You're sort of bumping up against the time limit.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have testimony?
I would like to note for the record that staff did receive 2 letters of concern that were passed out via email to the Plan Commission as well as the applicants, and then were passed out on paper tonight. And additionally, we have received a written request for an automatic continuance from Allison Coleman. Heyman.
And does she live within,
Yeah,
is she a leaseholder within 500 feet, or, I'm sorry, within 1,000 feet, or an owner within that distance?
The written request has an address of 515 Main Street.
That would be within 1,000 feet. On page 13 of the rules, number 7, there is a provision for automatic continuance, but let's get any other public comment, because at the continued hearing, there can be rebuttal of anything that is said today or tonight. So is there any other public comment other than questions? Mr. Thompson, we could hear your rebuttal now, but there may be more testimony from neighbors at the next hearing date, or you can reserve it for the next hearing date after you have heard all of the objections and any testimony that objectors might bring. And so that's your choice how to proceed. Of course, if you do rebuttal now, you're not precluded from doing more rebuttal after the additional testimony.
If I could address a few of the points that were made today, and I am sensitive to everyone's time, so I'll try to be brief in my rebuttals to some of these. I know some of the folks from the audience have left, so I don't have an opportunity to cross-examine them and their expertise in the area.
Of people who are still here.
Well, I think just to and we've heard ample discussion on the parking and the traffic concerns. I think our traffic consultant has addressed with fact. I know a lot of people live in the area and see this on a day-to-day basis, and what their opinion and what they formulate to be what they believe to be true. But we do have experts that we have here. We do have experts on traffic. We do have experts on real estate values that have come and testified, that have provided written reports. So in terms of the traffic concerns, I think the testimony today by Louis Abuna and the report that he provided show factually the amount of additional traffic this project will have in the community. And based on those numbers, as Louis had testified, it is not a significant amount of additional traffic that this particular project will add to the community. I think Mr. Cannon had asked a question hypothetically, and I think it may have been more of his opinion, is how could somebody know what the impact would be on a property? Well, we do have appraisers who are trained in appraising property. You do have a requirement that we testify to the standards, and we've done that. And I think Mr. Wolin has testified to that based on his professional opinion, not his personal opinion, but as an appraiser, that this project will not have a negative impact on the surrounding property values. I did have a question. I wasn't sure when Mr. Cannon was talking about dragging their feet. I wasn't quite sure who he was referring to on the parking issue. I know he mentioned to Commissioner Asaro that he was talking about the parking, and I don't know if he meant the city of Evanston or if he was talking about us, but I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
I don't know that it's relevant to foot dragging is not in the standards.
No, it's not, but it is testimony that he is implying. If it was about us, then I would obviously address it. If it was about the city, that's not my argument to make. That would be the city to address. And that was the only reason I brought that up. In terms of a few points the last gentleman raised, in terms of height of the building, he alluded to the fact that it should be half the size of what we're requesting. First of all, what we're requesting is within the ordinance it's contemplated by, as of right, we can build a 67-foot tall building, and with the plan development, we're allowed to go up to 97 feet. So that's within and contemplated within the code. And also in terms of the number of unit counts, just to clarify, what the ordinance currently allows us, and if you bear with me for 1 minute here, we can actually construct, in terms of overall units, we can build, or we're contemplating, or excuse me, we're allowed a 40% increase within the plan development, or 122 units. We are not building to that maximization, which is allowed under the ordinance. We're building less than that. So I just wanted to clarify in terms of a few of the points that were made. I would reserve my right to rebuttal at the continuance. As the chairman indicated, the matter this hearing shall be continued, and we would want to rebut. And I'm sorry, one last point on traffic. In a TOD, in a traffic-oriented development, other jurisdictions, for example, to the south in the city of Chicago, they allow an adjustment for 50% reduction in parking requirements if the development is within 600 feet of a transit-oriented train station, which we are. And that's roughly, when you look at the parking ratios, that Melissa walked through, the total overall parking requirements with the mixed use, with the commercial, with the office, and with the residential is 216 spaces. We are at 104 spaces. If you extrapolate that out and say, okay, how many are for the residential, it's 155 spaces that would be required for the residential. And if we just talk about the underground parking, it's 74 spaces. So it's right almost at that 50%, which is what you see in other jurisdictions in terms of the reduction in parking requirements for TODs. So those were just a few of the points that I did want to make, and I again thank you for the opportunity.
Let me ask the board if they have any specific matters they would like addressed at the continued hearing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would like to understand. I would like to understand the parking situation at Amway, at 515, and other buildings in the neighborhood. Understand what the ratio is of cars to units. This building is going to have, I think, 7 3-bedroom units, which implies that it'd be great for a family. Families have cars. So I would like to understand that.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I think for some of the people on this commission, it may be helpful to actually see what that intersection and the street in front of 515 look like. I'm usually stuck on that street maybe twice a day, so I know how bad it is over there. But maybe Mr. Abuna has given his assessment of what he believes the change will be, and he believes that the change is not going to be that significant. I think you guys may just want to also take a camera or something and show, because I'm stuck on that street all the time, so I know what's out there. That would be helpful. In addition, I think Mr. Commissioner Ansaro had also a while ago raised the issue of what are some of the other options that could be explored to make this feasible. And so far, I haven't heard anybody opposed you for what is in this binder. What is this binder stands on its own. I think the anxiety has to do with the parking. So maybe on this side, you all have to explore what are some of the things. And I think he also said, maybe there's an opportunity to throw funds to make it happen.
Is there another question or statement from the commissioner?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Just for clarification real quickly before we have another question. It's been brought to my attention and staff has verified it. The existing condition, if we can pull up the site plan, for southbound Chicago Avenue is accurate. And we'll clarify that, and we'll have the applicant clarify that in a continuance hearing. But when you're headed southbound, and I'm looking at the view right now, there are dedicated lanes for right, left, and straight through at that intersection. And if you go to the building where the subway is located, those lanes currently exist. There is metered parking, but it starts significantly back from the intersection.
I think my recollection is there's stacking space for about 3 cars.
It's more than that. It's significantly more than that. But in any event, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
And I also want to, too, while I'm up here, staff will also not only, to Commissioner Freeman's point, do more thorough research on other parking ratios that exist in the area and also in other planned developments, but we're also going to do a more thorough job in terms of explanation of other communities' transit-oriented development allowances and how they account for that and parking, taking into account Chicago, but also more importantly, taking into account communities that more closely resemble Evanston. I can speak to the fact that those do exist in Oak Park and the communities that we often get compared to, and we will include that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just have one problem, as I've mentioned before, about this proposal, and that's the parking. And I would invite the development team to consider some alternatives to solve this, what I think is a severe parking problem.
I believe that there is nothing scheduled on the fourth Wednesday, which is the 26th of February. I don't know if people here can come on that date. We have to choose a date certain for continuance, and so let me start by inquiring of the board if it would be feasible to next meet, continue this to the last Wednesday in February. Mr. Ford.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Anyone have a problem? No. Then I would ask for a motion to continue this hearing.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, can I ask a couple questions pertaining to information I would like to have presented to us at the next meeting? I appreciate Mr. Munzer's remarks and the type of information that you intend to provide us at the next hearing. I think that we will be very helpful. Transit-oriented development is the emerging flower child of any kind of development. I don't know anybody that, in principle, will not stand behind it. But what we're talking about now is where the rubber meets the road. And I guess the pun could be intended. So I think even though I am relatively well read in transit-oriented development, and I've read the Urban Land Institute's comments about it, nevertheless I find myself somewhat nervous given the context that's been presented as part of this project. So any education of myself and the other commissioners, I think, as it relates to that, would be very beneficial. Similar contextual projects in any other city and so forth, you know what I'm talking about. I would also like to request that the parking department present us with the capacity and the use of the street parking in the vicinity of this project. And I would also like to have a better understanding of the state of the alley as it runs south. Is it to Kedzie, where you exit? I will certainly spend some time myself visiting it in person, but I'd be curious to see a drawing which has dimensions and indicates where loading and unloading positions are located, so I have a better understanding of the ease of which transit can be afforded of the residents of this building, since I would suspect that many of them would choose to take that route, both coming and going, given the existing congestion at the other avenues of access and egress. I'm also wondering, these are the developer, the appraiser, the traffic gentleman, the architect. These are all well-established professionals, and I'm sure that the source of your funds are nothing less than esteemed and well-practiced financiers. So I find it interesting that you are willing to go this far with a development that, on the first blush, seems to be deficient in parking, even though we understand what may be possible at other locations. So my question to you is, given the demand for on-street parking for existing residents, would you proceed with this project if there was a stipulation that none of the residents and maybe the office tenants were allowed to park on adjacent streets? And that ends my questions and comments.
Chairman?
Yeah. Mr. Ford?
Just on the matter of information we would like, in the notebook there was a copy of, I think it's a piece of the TOD study that is being done now, and for whatever reason the copying machine produced a copy that one could only read with 3D glasses.
Correct.
Could we get a clean copy of that report?
I was looking for those glasses in the packet.
Yeah, it leapt right out at you. If we could get a clean print of that, that would be sweet.
I can speak a little bit to that. The study is currently being finalized, and there's a website where the preliminary draft report can be found, and I'll make sure that the board receives at least the link to that website with the preliminary draft report.
Mr. Thompson, is the 26th a satisfactory date for you?
Yes.
There's been a request for a mandatory continuance pursuant to Rule R7, which is on page 13. And so this hearing will be continued to the 26th at 7 p.m.
Quick question.
Yeah.
It's satisfactory for Mr. Thompson. What about the people who asked for the continuation? Is that satisfactory for them?
Other people? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the only item on the agenda. Is there a motion to continue this?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. The meeting is adjourned and the matter is continued.